Now on Daf Lamed Tesam and Beis, Hasam, there with regard to other Averos that will impact on the world. Sheyesh biyodam limchos v'lo micho. And why? Are they guilty? Because they could have protested and they didn't protest. But in the case of a false oath, this affects even those who could not have prevented the transgression. They could not have protested. And now the Gemara goes on to set up three different levels of communal liability. Number one, my ikabe mishayim de mishpachto. We have his mishpacha; they'll suffer, and then we have the rishonim of the world, and then we have the tzaddikim of the world. So the rishonim di alma and bein tzaddikim mishpachto tzaddikim di alma hu b'shara veros bidine. Right, with regard to other averos, not shua sheker, then he will get for taking that for doing that avera, he will get a severe punishment. Rishoim de mishpachta b'din chamur, and so too there will be a very severe punishment meted out to the evildoers in his family who are apparently guilty of the same or similar avera. But Rishoim de alma, when it comes to the evildoers in the whole world, bidin kal. That's again in other averos other than shua sheker, they will get a light punishment. Tzaddikim, dahacha p'tiri. Tzaddikim, whether they're in the family or outside the family in the world, they are exempt from punishment. But Gabi Shua, if a person takes a false shvua, who urishoim to mishpacha b'dinei, the sinner himself and those rishoim in his family will get the full brunt of the same identical punishment. Urishoim di alma, and other rishonim in the world will get a din chamur; they'll get a severe punishment, but not as severe as those who are in the family itself. And the tzaddikim dahacha b'din hakal. Tzaddikim in the family and tzaddikim in the world at large will get a mild punishment, but they will be punished. That's the severity of shua sheker. Im Amreinu Nishpa Pochinoso Miyad, the Brisa says that if he immediately says, I'm not willing to take the shvua, then we just tell him to leave and he has to pay. Im Amreinu Nishpa Shama Milzel Sesuru Nom Yala Ole Anashim Harishoyim Ha'ele. Now, why does it say Harishoyim Harishoyim in the plural? Bishlema hu de komishtaba koi bisure. I understand that the one who takes the shvua, the litigant, he's wicked for taking the shvua. But alahu de komashbiale amai. Apparently, the plural of the word rishoyim, right, where it says suru nomial ohale hanoshim, ole in the plural, is because we're including even the plaintiff who forced the defendant to take the shvua. Is amai? Why is he characterized as a Russia? And the Gemara answers, Kirisanya, like we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Shimon ben Tarfon Omer, Shvuas Hashem tia ben shneim, melamed shechol shvua al shneim. So, in other words, I think what the Gemara is trying to convey is that no one's completely innocent over here. The truth somehow lies in the middle here, between the two, between the Toveh and the Nitba, and the Nishba. Let me just see if he adds anything here. He says here, the plaintiff, right, the Toveh, was not careful to entrust his property to a reliable individual, one who would not deny a claim. The plaintiff, therefore, was negligent in his regard, and this resulted in the fact that the defendant had to take a shvua, and the shvua was a shvua sheker, and it was a desecration of God's name. So even the litigant, the tovea, the plaintiff, is also guilty. Why did you get involved with such a person? Ukshmashbin also, Omelo have you deshla datcha, Lomali lemem hachemishum kanya de Rava. So this is a famous story of Rava where the Nitba hid the money inside a cane, and when it was time for him to take the shvua that he paid back, which was a lie, he asked the toveh, "Please hold on to my cane." And of course, the malva had no idea that inside the cane was his payment, and the litigant, the defendant, took the shvua that I paid you back, which was true at that time. Hataina shtei kesef. Oh, okay. Now let's see how we're doing on the clock. Now we're getting to the heavy part of the sugi. I guess Steve had to go. Omar Rav. Okay, now we have machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, which we'll try to understand. Rav says, Kfiras taina shtei kesef. When the Mishnah sets up a minimum value for the shvua of Modu Miktas, it's a minimum of shtei kesef for the kfira. Now, the amount of money that the defendant denied equal to shtei kesef. Now, again, that's the amount of money he denied. He also had to admit part of the money. So therefore, you're going to have to jack it up, and the tvia would have to be more than shtei kesef. Because if the tvia is only shtei kesef and the kfira is shtei kesef, there was no room for modu mixas. So you have to add X, which represents the hodah, to Rav's shtei kesef, which is the kfira. But Shmuel Omar, taina atzma shtei kesef. The shtei kesef doesn't set up a requirement of the kfira, but rather a requirement of the taina. The taina has to be a minimum of shtei kesef. Now, if the taina is going to be shtei kesef, then the kfira is going to be less than shtei kesef, because there's got to be room for a hodah as well. And Shmuel says, "Afilu lo kafar elabit pruta v'lo hodah elabit pruta." So these two elements of kfira and hodah could be as low as a pruta. So you could have two possibilities, right? You could have a scenario in which he denies a pruta and he admits on the balance of shtei kesef, or he denies only a pruta and admits the balance of the shtei kesef. In both cases, chayet. Omar Rava, Deika Masnisa Kavasi de Rav, Ukroi Kavasi de Shmuel. Deika Masnisa Kavasi de Rav, the Psukim seem to read, the Mishnah seems to read as a reflection of Rav Shita, the Ketani. It says in the Mishnah, Hataino Shtei Kesef, Vahodah Shave Pruta. So what do we see here in the Mishnah? I mean, according to Rav, you need a kfira of shtei kesef. So therefore it says hodah shava pruta. Now, why did it say that the hodah is a shava pruta? Why not tell me that the kfira is a shava pruta? According to Shmuel, even if the kfira was one pruta, he's chayav v'shuas modu v'mikta. Even the kfira is taina pruta lok tani. So why did the Mishnah omit kfiras tainis shava pruta? Because it's not enough to be kofar on a shava pruta. You have to be kofar on a full shtei mos, according to Rav. Utnan Nami, furthermore, we have a Mishnah later on. Hodah bepruta. Once again, it's all the emphasis here is on the hodah for pruta. That we're astonished that even a pruta is enough. For that's for hodah, but the implication is a kfira pruta loktani. Whereas according to Shmuel, since even a kfira of a pruta is machay v'shvu, it should have mentioned that. So from the omission of kfira bepruta, we derive the conclusion that a kfira has to have a minimum. And what is the minimum for a kfira that constitutes a kfira? It's got to be shtei kesef. However, Kroy, Kavase the Shmuel, the psukim, if we read them on a simple level, without without doing somersaults in the air, seem to indicate that Shmuel is right. Why? Because it says ki yitain ish al re'eu kesef o kelim lishma. So what was deposited in the hands of the shomer was kesef or kalim. Now kalim is plural, so it's a minimum of two utensils, and therefore kesef, which is compared to kalim in this pasuk, also requires two kesef, and therefore ma kalim shnayim af kesef shnayim, and so forth. Now he says ma kesef dover chashuv af kol dover chashuv. So it has to be an item of significance. So let's say he claims another object, not a utensil, then the Hodav Mitzvahs would not generate a Shvuah unless it has the same value as the Kesef, as the silver. Ukamar Achmona ki hu zeh. Ki hu zeh is the lashon of a Modav Mitzvahs. And he takes a shvuah because he admits half of or part of the claim. So it seems that the original claim had to be shtayim kesef, 2 mos of kesef, and the denial was much less than that amount. And the hodah was only a pruta, which means that when you subtract the pruta of shtei kesef, you get a hodah, which is less than shtei kesef. For Rav, right? What is Rav going to do with the Mishnah, which we said, with the Psukim, which we said, ki uzeh is mashma like Shmuel. He's learning that the din, the halacha that's derived from ki uzeh, is that you need a hodah b'miktzas hatayna, which again Shmuel's going to argue that's obvious. Ushmuel ksiv hu, uksiv zeh. So what do we do with the extra zeh? The e kafar b'miktzas v'odu b'miktzas chay. If he partially denies the claim, partially admits to the claim, then he's obligated to take a shvuah. For Rav, why does Rav reject that interpretation of the psukim? Chad lo do b'miktzas hatayna, v'chad lo do mimin hatayna. We need that extra pasuk of zeh to teach me that the hodah has to be mimin hatayna. Now that doesn't mean that Shmuel has to accept that principle, because we saw already in the Mishnah a machlokas tanoim about this point. Ushmuel lav mimela shamet minei. Right? Even though I admit that you need 2 words to teach 2 different laws, you need the ki, hu, and the zeh, but nevertheless, and he asks it like a rhetorical question, do you not derive from the verse as a matter of course that the denial need not be for 2 mos, the chasrul atayna? The original claim mentioned in the Torah is now lacking the admitted portion. So that the denied portion, the kfira, clearly does not equal to 2 mos. So how is Rav going to explain the pasuk? Ela, but rather Omelcha Rav, kesef ki osamei kara, when the word silver was used. Is l'kfira hu diasa? It's coming to teach you that the denial has to have that minimum. And it's not talking about the total value of the claim. The imkain, if it was so that silver comes to teach the value of the claim, which would be Shmuel Shita, is licht over upon the Torah should have said, Ki yitain ishal re'eu kelim lishmar. And kelim is in plural, so therefore the minimum of kelim means 2 kelim. Is ma kelim shnayim af kol shnayim. Is then kesef the kosav rachman ulamali. The word kesef is completely superfluous. It could have just said ki yitain ish el re'eu kelim lishmar. Since it has no bearing on the amount of the plaintiff's claim, which is the subject of the pasuk, then let's use it for the shear, the minimum shear of the kfira. Ushmuel Amalacha. If the Torah hadn't added the word kesef and it just said kalim, of a low cost of kesef, is hava. I mean, I would have thought my kalim shnayim, af kol shnayim, aval dover chashuv lo be'inon. Kamash Malon, he mentions kesef to teach us that the claim must be for some significant item. And since the word kesef is not miyutar, therefore we cannot use it to teach that the kfira has to be worth at least a minimum of shtei kesef. Tonight we learned in our Mishnah shtei kesef yeshli biyodcha ein lecha biyodi ela pruta pot my timer lab mishum dechasol taina. Shouldn't it be because he doesn't have enough of a taina? He only taina shtei kesef, and that would mean that according to Rav, you would have to have a taina that's more than shtei kesef, so that the kfira could be on shtei kesef and leave a little bit of amount for the hodah. Utiyav to the Shmuel, Amalcha Shmuel, mi savish shavik tani. You think the Mishnah is talking about a case where the tvia and the hodah were for a piece of property that has a monetary value of the coins mentioned therein low. Dafka Ketani, the Mishnah is stating a specific case where the dispute concerns which metal is owed. The claim and the admission are for the respective amounts of metal contained in the coins that are mentioned in the Mishnah. Masha ta'ano lo hodolo, umasha hodolo lo ta'ano. So the reason why the nitva doesn't take the shvua is because the tfiyah and the hodah did not involve the same type of profit. It has nothing to do with the fact that the kfir was less than 2 mos. Ihachi frektimar meseifa shtei kesef upruta yeshli biyodcha ein lecha biyodi ela pruta chayav. Iyamrit bishlema shava. If we're talking about property that has the monetary value of the coins, mishum not the metal, but the value is mishum hachi chayav, because there's a hodah mimin atayna, and we said that matbeos all are included on the one rubric. Elo yamrit dafka, but if you're talking about the metal itself, is amai chayav. Mashatana lo hodalo. The taina itself was on silver, and the admission was on copper. Masha hodalo, regarding the copper, which the nitva admitted that he owed the tovea, lo ta'ano. So the Gemara answers, no. Midi hu taima el Shmuel, Omer of Nachman Omer Shmuel, that tana b'chitin siorin v'hodalo b'yechad mehem chayev. In other words, Shmuel doesn't accept that halacha that it has to be a hodah min ataynach mistabra midiktoni seifa. So again, we want to bring a proof that the Mishnah is talking about a claim of metal, right? Not the value of the coins, but the metal. Midiktoni seifa litra zav yeshli biyodcha, and there again he's demanding a certain weight in gold. And the nitba responds, ein lecha biyodi litra kesef patur. So you see that the entire Tvia and hodas on the metal value. The Mishnah is bedafka, and it's specifically referring to a weight in gold and a weight in silver. Mishum hachi patur. It's not miminataina el amrit shove. If we're not talking about a litra in terms of the weight of gold, but rather its value. Is amai potter? Why should it be potter? Litra tuva havi, right? A property that's worth a litra of gold was being claimed, and one of silver was being admitted. There's ample value in the original claim and the admission of denial to cause the defendant to take the shvua. Elmi the Sefer Dafka Reisha Nami Dafka is Lemet Heavy Tufta the Rav. Omal Charav Kula Masnisin Shove. The entire mission is talking about claims for the value, not for the metal itself. The litra zav shiny, but the case where the litra, the denial certainly met the 2 mana requirement, and therefore the nitba is only potter because the claim was a litra's weight of gold. And it wasn't the hodam, even a taina teda, here on Daf Mem, we'll finish it up. The katani seifa dinar zav li biyadcha, ein lecha biyadi el dinar kesef, right? Chinese meanings of them is chaya. Shakol mimin matbea achas hein. If you're going to say that in the ratio, we're talking about a case where the claim is for the value of the golden coin, mishum halchi chayav, that makes sense. These chayav shvua, because we're talking about the shava, meaning the value of a litra of zav, LE, and all the different monetary values are part of the same min. Ela dafka. If you're going to say that the tvia, the taina, and the hodah were literally for the metal content, then am I chayev? After all, it's shalom min a taina. Okay, then this is where we'll stop for today, and hopefully same time tomorrow. Have a great day.